President Trump telling us here on Fox and Friends what his plan is for the future of Venezuela. Listen.
Well, we're making that decision now. We can't take a chance on letting somebody else run and just take over where he left or left off. So we're making that decision now. We'll be involved in it very much. And we want to do liberty for the people. We want to, have a great relationship. I think the people of Venezuela are very, very happy because they love the United States. They were run by essentially a dictatorship or worse. It couldn't have been worse. It was a terrible thing that was taking place in Venezuela. But look, tremendous numbers of people were being killed through drugs. And what they did to our country in sending prisoners and people from mental institutions and drug lords and everything, they sent them by the hundreds of thousands of people into our country. And that is just unforgivable.
Now is Bret Baier, Fox News chief political anchor and anchor of Special Report. Bret, what was your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, it's a major coup for you to get him on the phone, and that interview was fascinating and provided many more details than we had all morning long, and it probably is going to foreshadow what we're going to see at the 11 a.m. news conference. But his description of watching it real time, which they have a skiff at Mar-a-Lago where they set up video monitors that can see real time what the special ops forces and those teams are doing on the ground, to watch that and see Maduro and his wife kind of scurry through this very well-protected house into a safe room, not being able to close the big steel door before they're taken by special ops. I mean, it's very dramatic the way he talked about it. I also thought it was interesting. This is a very kinetic military operation that dealt with a lot of complicated parts. And he said, I think we had nobody killed, but we had a couple of guys hit. A helicopter was hit pretty hard, he said. So we'd like to hear more about that, obviously, from the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, and others. He clearly knew this was coming, had planned for it for 4 days ago, but the weather was not cooperating. We had that assumption that this was an operation that had long been planned. I thought it was fascinating when you all asked about the communications with Maduro, and he said he had talked to him just recently. There was an effort to try to, for him to get some kind of deal, and he was not relenting, and this led to where they were. I think still the biggest questions are, how do you get from point A to point B on the ground as far as the regime, and what happens with the other elements that were loyal to Maduro? He says he doesn't think there are a lot of them still, but that's a big question that we're probably going to get at the 11 a.m. news conference.
Yeah, were you surprised that we asked him, Bret, whether he would throw his support behind Maria Corina Machado, the opposition leader, and he didn't commit there?
Yeah, I was surprised by that. I think he's just holding his cards to see what exactly happens on the ground. And she, is essentially the opposition figure. And after she was prevented from running, another person actually won the election. Maduro was the disputed leader, who we did not recognize as the leader of Venezuela. And as we said, he's going to be facing prosecution in the Southern District of New York. I thought it was fascinating that they were taken out by helicopter. In coming days, they will see a stand before a judge in New York. This is a major, major moment. It's a big, big news day. And to hear the president kind of describe all elements of this is pretty unique.
And Bret, the president kept coming back to, while there is a humanitarian crisis for the Venezuelan people occurring in Venezuela, he kept coming back to that this is part of the America First agenda. These military strikes, the capture of Maduro to bring him back to face his charges, this is about the American lives that have been lost and the war on narco-terrorism.
Yeah, and he referenced that numerous times, and it says that he thinks it's north of 300,000 people. He's talking about each boat preventing 25,000 deaths. It's tough to get those numbers to line up as far as what we're seeing, but clearly it's having a big impact on the drug drugs coming into the U.S. I thought it was also fascinating to talk about Mexico and Colombia and Cuba and what this means for those countries and those leaders kind of looking over their shoulders, especially if they're dealing directly with the cartels in those countries. Could there be more strikes other places to go after cartel topics or places and safe houses? It sounded by the president's words that that's not out of the question. And that's a big moment.
Yeah, one of the areas where President Trump has always been most harshly critical of the invasion of Iraq revolves around the fact the United States never got paid for any of it. He often harangues about the idea that all that oil was left untapped. And he talked about how he was a little bit vague about it, but he said that the United States would be very involved in Venezuela's burgeoning oil industry. What did you make of that?
That was interesting, too. I think, Venezuela has a big presence when it comes to the oil market. Now, remember, this is kind of reverse in that the more oil you put on the market, the lower the price goes, and it is great for consumers, but for the companies that have to do long-term planning and how they plan things for each individual companies, it's kind of a reverse. As the price goes super low, it's not the best for those companies, but it's great for the American consumer. That said, I thought it was fascinating, his answer, that we have a number of great companies and they will be very involved. First, you got to get a regime, a government that is amicable to do that. And I think he's suggesting, or he believes, that that's in coming days we're going to see.
Did you take away, Bret, from that interview? He often talked about, what the strikes on the nuclear facilities in Iran. I referenced the 6th anniversary coincidence of taking out the Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard commander, which was taken out 6 years ago to the day. But he seemed to sort of suggest that you are seeing my foreign policy. This is how I'm going to do things. It comes as we have had a lot of criticism of the pressure campaign on Venezuela that we were about to get entangled into a long war.
Yeah, he's saying it's strategic, it's surgical, it's in and out. He credited many times in that interview how great the U.S. military is and how amazing they are at planning and pulling off something very complex, and then referenced other operations. It is interesting. It's the 6th anniversary of the targeting of Qasem Soleimani and what that did to change the dynamics in the Middle East. This is going to change the dynamics in Latin America. The Iran strike on the nuclear facilities changed the dynamics in the Middle East peace process and what we're seeing in Iran. And don't take, you can't overlook the fact that this has messages to other countries, including Iran, which is dealing with its own protests on the streets of Tehran. And the message that the president said is, watch your back. We're locked and loaded, he said in recent days on a Truth Social post. That also raised the eyebrows of some of the people inside the MAGA universe, saying, we're not into going into war, but he's showing that that's his policy right now, is these strikes having an effect and then helping these countries get to a place where they can be their own democracies.
All right, Bret Baier, great insight, and we look forward to you leading our coverage here in just over about an hour and 10 minutes at 11 a.m. Eastern. Bret, thank you.
Thanks so much, Bret.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.